Hi, Chartreuse. My name's Sabrina. I'm a student physical therapist assistant at Owens Community College, and I'm going to be going over some different stretching and strengthening exercises with you today to hopefully help speed up the process of your rehab. So, looking at your chart here, it looks like you were involved in a motor vehicle accident about 2 weeks ago. So sorry to hear about that. I know it's a really traumatic experience, not only mentally, but also physically, as we can see in your chart. So it looks like you were diagnosed with some whiplash, and then you're having some cervical radiculopathy and pain in your neck, and it's kind of like radiating from your neck, like down your left shoulder, and then even down into your fingers. So that's what that radiculopathy is. It's going to be kind of that pain sensation that's up in your neck, but kind of radiates down into your fingertips and through your shoulder. So hopefully some of the things we do today are going to help kind of relieve those symptoms and have you feeling a little bit better. So before we get started, I did email you a couple of exercises for your HEP. So if you want to go ahead and look at that. So it's going to look something like this. This is going to be the stretching exercise that I have for you. And then this is going to be the strengthening one. So we'll be going over 2 stretching and 2 strengthening. However, I just picked one of each to put on your HEP just to go a little bit more in depth about those 2. So we'll be going over those today as well if you want to pull them up in your email and kind of follow along. So we're going to actually be starting with the first one that I showed you. So this is going to be a deep neck flexor stretch. So looking over your chart, it looks like you're lacking a little bit of the range of motion extension. So that's going to be this motion here. So it looks like you're having a little bit of trouble getting the full range with that one. And that would be something that you'd want to fix just kind of like as a teacher. I know you're looking up at the board a lot. And then even at like red lights, if you pull up a little close, you kind of have to like look up at the light. So we don't want any of that to be painful for you. And so to kind of get you a little bit more range. So for that, this is extension. And so what's going to be tight is these muscles on the front of your neck, and these are going to be your flexors. So that's what we'll be stretching, like in the picture here. Mainly we'll be stretching the sternocleidomastoid. Big word, you don't necessarily have to remember it. This is one of the main muscles in your neck, though, that does a lot of things. So we'll be talking about it a lot today. And so when you're stretching, you should be able to feel that. It's going to be kind of this muscle. You can see it popping out a little bit. So like if I turn my head, that's going to be this big one right here in your neck. And you might have noticed it before and just didn't really know what it was. So that is what it is. So for this one, you can be seated or standing. If seated's more comfortable, that's fine. That's how I'll be showing you today. We want you seated with your hips shoulder width apart, and just kind of your feet also like hip shoulder width apart, everything kind of pretty equal all the way down your lower body. And then we want to make sure our shoulders are staying directly over the hips. So I don't want you like leaning forward at your waist or even leaning back, as opposed to moving your neck in this exercise is what we really want to focus on. And then this one, we also want to kind of try and keep those earlobes in line with like the top of your shoulder. So as you can see here, kind of in line with the top of the shoulder. So we don't want to see any of this where it's kind of a little bit forward. I'm dropping my chin down a little bit, or any of this. Because even that's just not a comfortable position for anybody. So we really want to try and avoid that. So to get started, all you're going to do is sit in the position that we just discussed. And you're going to tip your head straight back slowly. And then I want you to try and bring your ear down to your shoulder. So we still want that chin pointed straight up. So we don't want to see any of this turning. We want to go straight back and then kind of bring that chin or that ear to your shoulder. And then you should be able to feel that stretch right here, right on that muscle that we just talked about, the sternocleidomastoid. So again, nice and slow and controlled back. And then ear to the shoulder, and you should feel it stretch right in here. And you can even feel this on yourself. So like if you feel like you don't know if you're stretching the right muscle, you should be able to feel it, and you should be like, okay, that's definitely the muscle that I'm stretching. So if you're feeling a little bit too far like in here, you shouldn't really feel anything in there. It's going to be a little bit more to the side. And so again, we'll go straight back and then ear to the shoulder. And another thing that I don't want to see while you're doing this exercise, so when I say ear to the shoulder, it's not super important to get your ear as close to your shoulder as you can. We just want to kind of add that motion to get the best possible stretch here. So what I don't want to see is you kind of raising your shoulder up to get your shoulder to your ear. That's not the important part here. It's just getting that additional stretch in here. And so that is the one that I have listed for the stretches on your HEP, which at the end of the video, we'll go in a little bit more depth about. And so sticking with stretches, we're gonna do a stretch to increase your lateral flexion. So that's kind of like this motion that you would do. So a really good example is I proofread like a lot of my sister's papers. So I'll be reading something and I'll kind of look at it like this, and I'll do it without even realizing. So you might be doing this when you're grading papers, especially being an elementary school teacher. Kids write some funny, weird things. So even like looking at that paper and going, want to be able to do that without it being painful to you. And in your chart as well, it looks like you were lacking a little bit in your range of motion. So 17 degrees on the left and 19 degrees on the right. We're trying to get it in like a 45-degree range. So we're trying to improve that a little each and every day. So what this is going to be stretching, it's going to be stretching another muscle called your scalenes. And so this one is going to be kind of in line with like the back part of your ear down here. So it's not up front like the sternocleidomastoid. It's going to be a little bit further back, and you should be able to feel that muscle right here when you turn your head to the side. And so that's what we'll be stretching on both sides. And so all I want you to do is take your hand and we'll wrap it around your head. So again, the alignments with this one really going to be the same. All these kind of seated stretches and exercises that we'll be doing. Still want your hips shoulder width apart, your feet shoulder width, hip apart, everything pretty level on like the lower half of your body. And again, we want those shoulders in line with the hips. And we don't want to see any of that leaning forward, leaning back, or again, we don't want to see any of this. If we're doing this and then stretching this, that can become uncomfortable and kind of cause more problems. So we really want to avoid that. So this one, just want you to reach over the top of your head, and we're going to go directly to the side until you feel a good stretch. So I'm going pretty far here. So since you are lacking some of that range of motion, you don't have to go as far. Just go until you feel a nice stretch. And again, you should feel it right back here, just like we had talked about. And so then even on this side, so that'll look like this, we'll go straight over top and kind of aim for your fingertips just to be touching your ear. So we don't want to be here and kind of pulling down on the head. And I don't want you to like overly exert yourself so you're in this kind of funky position when you're doing it. So we still want that shoulder down, and we'll just reach over kind of, here, I'll show you from the side. So like my fingertip is just barely touching the top of my ear. And so then we'll go. And again, these are all really slow, gradual movements. We don't want to do anything where it might like make those symptoms of your radiculopathy worse, anything like that. And so that goes for that neck flexor stretch that we did in the beginning as well. So that was this stretch. So if at any point when you're doing that stretch, you feel like an increase in that like radiculopathy pain. So I know it's just down your left arm right now. If you feel it kind of going on like the right side or even down like your right arm, I want you to stop immediately. And we'll talk about it at your next appointment. Just let me know and we'll kind of change some things up because we don't want to see an increase in those symptoms, and we definitely don't want to see an increase in pain. So just some things to think about when you're doing these exercises. And again, especially with like the strengthening ones, if you feel like you can't perform it safely, that's another reason I'd want you to stop, or like with the correct form. So like the first one I talked about, you kind of hiking your shoulder up. So if you realize you're doing that, go, okay, we talked about this. I don't want to do that. Make a mental note. And then if you try and do it again and you're still kind of doing that, I just want you to stop the exercise. And again, we'll try something different the next time. And so that last one was going to be our last stretching exercise, and that was the lateral flexion. That'll be stretching the scalenes. And so again, that's just going to be that muscle here right on the side a little bit further back than that sternocleidomastoid we talked about. And then, so if you go to your next page of your HEP that I sent you, we'll get into our strengthening exercises. And so the first one is going to be this cervical flexion strengthening exercise. So this one, it's going to be to now strengthen that muscle we initially stretched, that sternocleidomastoid. And so I don't want you going through any of that range. So I don't want to see any of this motion while we're completing this exercise. We're just going to apply, like, I call it a barrier. It helps me like process it in my head. So like if I was like up against a wall, I want to complete this motion, but I can't because this barrier is here. So that's the motion you want to do to get that strengthening. That's what you want to think about, like pushing into your hand without actually completing that motion. So you really want your hand to prevent you from doing this motion. And so this is going to be really important. So again, as a teacher, you're looking down a lot, grading papers. You want to be able to have that strength in your neck, that first of all, you're not just looking straight down, you're able to hold your head up in a fixed position, looking at papers without looking straight forward or straight down. So that's a good way to strengthen this. So that's going to be the one on the HEP. So we'll go over that. So all I want you to do, seated in this same position we've been in the whole time. But again, we'll go over all of your alignments. So we want those hips shoulder width apart, knees and feet also shoulder width or hip width apart, everything really level on your lower half. And then again, shoulders in line over top of the hips. And the same thing with the ears. We want them in line over top of the center of the shoulder. So again, just what good form looks like. So we want to be sitting as straight up as possible, as comfortable as possible. And then we don't want to see any of this or any of this. And then we also don't want to see like any leaning forward or leaning backwards. Okay, and so for this one, you're just going to take the palm of your hand, go straight on your forehead, and then we're going to push into our hand, and you can see that muscle fire that we talked about in the beginning, the sternocleidomastoid. So that's going to be this one. You can see it fire really well. So if you really want to know if you're doing it correctly or if you're kind of seeing like an improvement in your strength, this is something you can do sitting in front of a mirror. Even you can record yourself and watch yourself later and go, okay, we talked about not to do this, or we talked about this is what it should look like, and mine looks like that. Awesome. So again, we'll go palm to the forehead, and we'll go straight forward, and you should see that fire. And then I'll show you can see it on the other side as well. So if you want to switch hands just to get a better view for yourself, and there it is on that side as well. So again, when putting pressure on your forehead, you want to try and do this motion. This is the motion you're trying to do with your hand here. So if I took my hand away, this is the motion I'd be doing. We don't want to do that, so we'll just keep the hand here and pretend in my head, okay, this is the motion that I'm trying to do. So keep that in mind. We're really trying to avoid going through that full range. That's just something that can kind of like reciprocate those symptoms that you had when you had like your initial whiplash. And so we don't want to do that. Again, we don't want to see an increase in pain or an extension of like that numbness and tingly. So I know it's only in your like first 3 fingers. So if you feel it like extending into your pinky, or even again going down that other arm, go ahead and stop, and let me or the PT know next time, and we'll give you something else to do. And so that's going to be the last exercise on your HEP. Again, we'll go over this a little bit more in depth at the end of the video. But for now, we're going to move on to our last strengthening exercise. And so this is going to be to strengthen your lateral rotation. So that's going to be this motion. So just kind of looking to the side. It's a little similar to the lateral flexion, but that one's going to be kind of turning the top of your head, and this one is going to be kind of turning your chin. So if that's helpful for you to remember the difference. So lateral flexion, again, chin stays in the same spot pointed forward, but the top of your head moves, and the lateral rotation, top of your head stays in the same place, but your chin's going to move. And so to strengthen this one, again, we're going to do this without completing any of the range. So that motion I just showed you, we're not going to do any of that motion. Again, we're going to use our hand as our barrier, and we're going to go on the side of the head and just kind of push into your hand. And so again, sternocleidomastoid, a big muscle in the neck. We use it for a lot of things. So pushing into your hand, that's the one you'll see fire again. And so that's what you'll be looking for again on both sides doing this exercise. So for the last strengthening exercise we did, the one where you just push straight forward into your hand, you don't have to do that on both sides. However, this one you'll have to do on both sides. So if you notice when I'm doing it and I'm pushing this way, you can only see it fire on this side. And so when I'm saying fire, I just mean that's when the muscle is contracting and you can really see it, as opposed to just a relaxed position. So then to do it on the other side, again, we'd go hand on the side of the head, and I'll show you kind of like the placement on the side of my head. I know my elbow kind of gets in the way a little bit, but really like the palm of my hand is just kind of gonna be in like this temple. So I know in class, again, elementary school teacher, you get kind of annoyed and you feel like you just need to like relax for a second and kind of like rub the temples on the side of your head. That's where I want you to place the palm of your hand when completing this exercise. So then going this way, we're going to be pushing in, and you can see it fire on this side as well. And so same position. These are going to be really simple for you to remember kind of your alignments just because you're seated in the same position every single time. So again, those hips shoulder width apart, feet shoulder and hip width apart, and then you want your shoulders in line with your hips, so kind of sitting as straight up as possible. And again, we don't want to see any of this leaning forward, especially when completing this exercise. Again, you're going to feel that in the back of your neck and it's going to get kind of uncomfortable, so we really want to avoid that. And so we'll just go over this one more time. So again, palm on the side of the head, see that fire right in there, and kind of just trying to turn your head to the side. So if my hand wasn't here and I was pushing, I move my hand, and that's the motion that I'm trying to do. Alrighty, so those are all the exercises I have for you today. So now we can go over this HEP a little bit more in depth. Give me just a second so I can pull them both up in front of me. If you want to, if you haven't already, go ahead and check in your email for your HEP, just so you can kind of go over it with me. So we're going to go over the stretching of the cervical flexors first. So this one, we're just going to do one set of 3 reps a day. And then each time you do this, I want you to hold for 10 seconds and then you'll rest for 5. And so I want you to do this 4 times a week, just once a day, whenever you're able to. So even if you're like sitting, drinking some coffee and it's a little hot, so you're just going to wait, maybe that would be a good time to do it. So you're just kind of sitting there. And again, we're going to go straight back and then to the side. So then this is the position that I want you to hold it for. So I don't want you to start counting when you're here. I want you to start counting once you get this like extra stretch, just by kind of tipping your head to the side a little bit. And so then you'll come back down. So we'll go here, I'll hold for 10 seconds, go back to normal and come back down, rest in between sets for 5 seconds, and then repeat that again. So again, we're going to do that one 3 times, and then that's it. We'll just do our 10-second holds. So it'll be a total of 30 seconds that you'll be holding, and just once a day, 4 times a week. All right, and then your strengthening one, so that's going to be this one. This one is a little bit similar with just how often you do it. So again, it's going to be 1 set. This one we're actually going to do 5 reps, and you're only going to hold for 5 seconds. So since it's not a stretch, it might be a little bit more difficult to hold. So that's why we've lowered it down to 5 seconds, and then we're going to increase your rest time to 10 seconds. And we'll do this one still once a day, 4 times a week. So that's going to be this one where you push into your hand. And so I want you to hold that push into your hand and see that muscle fire nice for that full 5 seconds, and then relax. And you can even bring your hand down, rest for those 10 seconds, and then again, complete that exercise, hold for 5, and relax. And so we'll do that once a day, 4 times a week. And hopefully some of the stuff that we're going over will begin to have you feeling a little bit better. Even having like a little bit more range might just be a little less painful for you without even realizing it. So you might be like turning and then causing pain and not even realizing it's just because you're lacking a little bit of your range. So even like looking both ways up and down, things you're not really paying attention to, driving in the car and you look to the side and you're like, oh my God, that doesn't hurt as much anymore. So that's kind of what we're looking for just with the exercises that I'm going over with you today. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You can send me an email, send me a text. You can even give me a phone call, just if you have any questions over anything. Just want you to get back to feeling as better as soon as possible. So if you're having any issues with any of the exercises or it feels uncomfortable or anything like that, just let me know and we'll change some things up. So I look forward to seeing you here soon. Bye.